Let's welcome our first speaker of the day, David Laster, a director of software solutions. Today, he will be presenting a Power BI approach to understanding GP security. Please stick around after David's session for a live Q&A.
Hello, thank you for attending DynamicsCon 2021 this year. Welcome to my session. I'll be presenting some information and some insights on how you can use Microsoft Power BI with Dynamics GP security. You simply won't believe what your data is telling you. My name is David Laster, and first of all, it's an incredible honor to be among the 18 presenters in the GP track at DynamicsCon this year. There's an incredible amount of talent and experience and knowledge in the presenter lineup this year, and to get all this training for free is really quite fascinating. So thank you to the folks at DynamicsCon for putting this session on. My name is David Laster, and I am the Director of Software Solutions at Greyvock Associates. We're a Microsoft Gold partner in the Boston area. And for 22 years, as you can see, I've been working with Dynamics GP. Started off initially as a staff accountant using Great Plains in 1999. I joined the partner channel in 2003. And since then, I've completed hundreds of upgrades and installations and thousands of training sessions and workstation installs and support trouble tickets and things like that. But at the end of the day, it's really all about Dynamics GP. You can say I've always liked financial reporting. I had at one time written a book on Management Reporter. And when I had seen Power BI come out a number of years ago, I knew that that was going to be really the next big thing in analytics and financial reporting. So I learned a lot. I spent some time with it and applied that knowledge to the Dynamics GP data structure and tables and environments. I'm having fun doing this. And DynamicsCon is certainly helping contribute to that opportunity. The journey that I've been on with Power BI really essentially goes back to some insight I got on how to monitor Dynamics GP environments with an Excel spreadsheet from Steve Erbach in the user group. Since then, I took that idea and I applied Power BI to that same principle, looking at a series of tables and data structures across 30 different dashboards in Dynamics GP in a manner that helps users, system administrators, and managers see what's going on inside their system without ever logging in or running a single spreadsheet or smart list. In 2020, that was a strange, interesting year, wasn't it? It was, in my opinion, but I had the opportunity to partner on this journey with Danny Clemenson from Integrity Data. And we shared with GP users how Power BI can work with your GP payroll environment to perform reporting or reference or any other sort of analytics that you would want. We were able to present that at a number of venues and got some really good feedback from the user base. This year, 2021 at DynamicsCon, I took and put together 22 dashboards I've been working on for about a year now. And this is an idea that I had that started back from one of the 30 original dashboards that I created on Dynamics GP security. This one has really started to take off, and I wanted to bring some of this information to the user base so you can see that it's not just about running the GP reports and about doing inquiries and trying to hope and wing in a prayer getting your GP security right. A couple of other side projects that I've been working on. I have a what's new dashboard that I'm creating for the GP users. And interestingly, I'm also working with Business Central environments, and I have a Great Plains to Business Central data migration analyzer that we're testing out right now with a couple of customers. If I had one session goal for today, it would be to demonstrate how Power BI can be used with your Dynamics GP environment to help ease your security reporting and compliance burdens in 4 major areas: analysis and reference, access to information, segregation of duties, and audits and audit reporting. These aren't and shouldn't be only annual or quarterly issues or concerns. You should have access to this information 24/7, and you can do that by publishing a dashboard to your internal Great Plains Teams channel. How effective is your Great Plains security setup? Do you know? Do you even want to know? What would you do if you found out that you had a lax security that enabled users to remove data from tables, or they were violating your stated company policies through inadequate segregation of duties within the system? Or if they accessed sensitive areas of the application they had absolutely no business being in, and they changed the way one of your modules behaves inadvertently? Has it ever happened to you? It may not happen on purpose, but accidents do happen. Buttoning up security can really help prevent that from happening in the future. Having a good security setup and reviewing the reports in Great Plains is really the traditional way of getting it dialed in just right. Those reports are very lengthy, oftentimes hundreds or even thousands of pages. They're a little inflexible, and there's really no smart list out of the box that help with this either. So to get answers quickly, it takes some significant time and energy sometimes, and we want to get this part right. Let's do a quick review of the GP security regime. We all know that Great Plains has these application users, right? And they're all SQL Server users. And users are provisioned to each company in a multi-company environment. Sometimes those companies are live and sometimes they're test environments. And each company can have its own roles assigned to that user. So they have essentially, they're not over permissioned in a place or a company where they shouldn't have access to certain things. Applying the power user role is something that a lot of people try to do. It's really not the best approach to mitigating your risk and preventing accidents or destruction or even fraud from happening in the system. Well, Dynamics comes with a whole bunch of predefined roles, right? And those roles have the little asterisk at the end of them. Those roles can be copied to new ones. You can also create your own custom roles, and those roles essentially are made up of a whole series of tasks, right? Tasks are where groups of security objects are combined to achieve the goal of the stated task. Inquiry and reporting tasks are generally pretty safe in nature to most users. However, admin tasks that allow access to setup and utility windows obviously allow for data entry to the system. It's common to create custom tasks, just like you would create custom roles. And the ISV products also have their own tasks that enable functionality for their environments. So operations really are where the rubber meets the road with GP security. If a user can get into a window, they can generally be expected to affect change in that window. And yes, there are 10 different operations down here, but when we're trying to look at and mitigate user access to things in the system, the windows is typically the area that we're going to stay focused on. All right. To build a Power BI security toolkit, you can do this on your own. You can look at some other opportunities that are out there, but you need about 5 things. Here are those 5 things I'm going to recommend to you. Number 1 is you got to have your system database. Most of us, we call that Dynamics. Sometimes in a multi-tenant environment, that might be by a different name. Second thing we're going to look for is to get Power BI Desktop. All right, it's an application just like Excel or just like Word is, but it is free. You can click the link in the Power BI presentation or in the PowerPoint presentation and download that from the website. Once you get connected, you want to talk to the Dynamics database, but we want to pull in, I got about 9 recommended tables here. Your user table, your role table, your roles and tasks table. Essentially, there's a series of data table structures in here that when you join them in the Power BI model, they really affect a nice outcome. All right, the resource descriptions table. Notice it's not on the list on the right. This item is an entity all its own. It is the table that you can build and rebuild periodically. It's a simple thing to do. And the step number 5 in your toolkit here is actually on Victoria Uden's website. On this link at the very top, she describes how to build or rebuild that SY9400 table. All right, so here's the 5 key items in order to getting a Power BI environment set up for your own security reporting. What I want to do next is let's actually bake into a Power BI model that I've created and have a look. All right. Welcome to the Security Analyzer dashboard that I've been working on for a little while here. we have a number of customers that have been using this, and we really got some great feedback from it. And myself, I found I can find a lot of answers really quickly with it. So I wanted to share this with you. There's a number of different concepts here. Again, we got about 4 areas we're going to cover. Let's first talk about analysis and reference information. Okay. I've got the second tablet up here is called the distinct tab. We're just looking at distinct information related to users or roles or tasks or windows, as you can see, reports and forms over here on the right. Now, using the slicer function here, I'm going to go ahead and clear out my user list. All right, I'm going to clear out so I don't have any users selected here. Let's choose Jack. Jack is going to be a sample user we're going to pick on a couple of times today as we go through our exercises. When the filter automatically engages, you'll see kind of downstream from here to the right that Jack, the user, is assigned to a couple of different roles. So with one click, we could find out the role access. All right. Additionally, extending that option down to the next column, you see we have the tasks. And these tasks are those associated with the roles that are associated with Jack. So now we have a quick ability here to maybe pop into this list, and we can see all of the task IDs and a brief set of descriptions of what those are. And here you can see it's not all of them. It's a pretty decent list, but Jack being in the position he's in, he's going to have some pretty good access. Let me get back to the main report. All right, perfect. Let me clear this one out. Clear away Jack here. Let's try somebody else. Let's look at a limited user. Now, in my users column, I have a user ID that we're going to come back to a couple of times. His name is limited, but what I've done is assign this user to a limited role ID so that you can then see how well that the role is set up for that particular user. All right, as it's refreshing here, you'll see that the roles, that was a little slower than typical, so I probably have something going on in the background. The roles now you can see is assigned to just a limited user, the purchase role. And the right idea here when you're analyzing the user security would be to check and see what kind of tasks do they have access to first. An example that you can see is the inquiries and the reports. He doesn't have access to any of the transaction or the card roles. So that would probably be a pretty good setup for that particular user. So additionally, this window being distinct can show you some additional information. Let's filter that back down. Let it pop all back to life. There we go. And let's start on the role side instead. Let's look at who our order processors are. We clicked on the role order processor. Everything else on the page is filtering down. I think I have a Windows update going on in the background. There we go. So you can see that the order processor role is assigned to only one user, the order processor. So we went backwards to see who was assigned to this role. And if we go downstream from here, you see that the tasks that are assigned to that role here are a little more expanded in nature from what we saw in the previous item. All right, here get some transactions and some reports that we picked up. The windows that are assigned to that are also available here, as well as the default modified reports and forms that one user is assigned to. Let's go ahead and select all this, pull this all the way back up so that we can use it later. Let's move on to the second dashboard here. This one I like because it's a really, really quick way to answer reference questions. One-click answers a lot of times. Here it comes. All right, this security details page is one of my favorites. Get a lot of one-click answers on this page. Starting from the left and going to the right, you see we've got the users and then their role and then the tasks associated with that. So if we want to look at Jack, let's click in the Jack list, Jack in the list on the left. And then moving to the right, you'll see it's automatically going to filter down and show us the users and roles that are assigned to Jack. And therefore, also by extension, all of the tasks in that last column. And notice that I've got more columns over here. And the columns are chosen based on the other columns that are in the SQL table that's part of the SQL query when you bring it into the data model. I just happened to choose these because I found that they were fairly insightful. Let's pop Jack back out. Go back to reset. And in our role list here, let's instead look at maybe the fixed asset manager. On the folks assigned to that role currently is just one on the left. And moving to the right, you see that the tasks assigned to that person and that role are also exposed. So again, one-click answers, click in, it filters, you click out, it unleashes the filter. Pretty cool functionality from an analysis standpoint. You really don't get this in a smart list. You don't get this in a report. So, and it probably takes you a good 10 or 15 clicks just to log in and get to the report window. So having a Power BI model like this really can probably help go a long way. So a good question we get all the time is, what roles are assigned to my users? This dashboard takes that presentation to a more visual level by showing like a cross-tab analysis of users and roles in your company. Going down the left side, you have the username, right? And going across the page, you have all the roles. So now it makes it a little bit easier to see if you have a couple of people that might be doubling up on roles, or if you have a role assigned to a user that really doesn't quite make sense. In this case, if I scroll here, you can see how many power users I have in my GP environment. So, not really a good best practice, but this is a tool that can give you a quick analysis here for finding that out. Let's drill into just a little bit deeper in this one here. It's always an interesting way to go. Let's look at the AP clerk now. We're going to try to look at a role-based analysis. Let me click on just the AP clerk role. And you'll see that on the lower right corner that we have related setup windows that have automatically been filtered down. And then on the upper right, we have related admin tasks. Okay. The analysis this is trying to do is help expose areas of risk or sensitive setup areas inside of the GP application. And if a user doesn't have admin tasks, or if a user doesn't have the ability to get into many of the setup windows, then they're not going to be able to do as much damage as they otherwise could. So it's a nice approach here to seeing what's up. Let me unclick this box here. I'm going to pop it back out. And let's look on the bottom right corner. We're going to drill in kind of the other direction with this analysis tool. In the related setup windows, let's do fiscal period setup. Hopefully this works with me. Here, fiscal period setup. That's a window. That's a sensitive area in Great Plains. I don't want to have too many people getting into. When I go to that window on the lower right, it automatically shows me the users and the roles that have access to this window. So again, just kind of another maybe one or two clicks, you can get the answer. Let's unexpose that again and leave it out there for next time. All right, one more in the analysis and reference. I think these are fascinating. So the 4 of number 5 I've created is the role comparison tool. Sometimes you get the question, how does this role compare to that role? What's different about them? To perform that analysis, typically you're running some SQL queries to find out what's going on. But in this case, using a Power BI analysis, we're able to effectively do like a control click on one role and a control click on the other role, and we can look at the tasks that make up those roles independently underneath them. For example, let's look on the left side here. Scroll down. Let's look at the accounting manager. All right, we're going to see the accounting manager role as we continue our analysis. And on the right side, let's look at the bookkeeper role. There we go. There's our bookkeeper. I'm going to do a control click. All right. So on the left side, all the tasks associated with the accounting manager are uncovered. And on the right side, all the tasks for the bookkeeper are uncovered. This gives you the ability to compare visually side by side. Maybe you want to compare just like the administration areas that the user has access to, or the cards maybe that the roles have access to. You can just do this on the fly without really running a report. So I think it's a pretty neat tool for getting at key differences between roles quickly and easily without wasting a whole lot of time. All right, those are the first 4. I'm going to move into the second couple now. I've got 3 dashboards to show here. These 3 dashboards really look about the same. In fact, let me pull one up. We're going to start in the setup area. This is going to expose what kind of access people have. All right. Remember the golden rule we talked about earlier on was if Dynamics GP says if you can get into the window, you can affect change in that window. Well, the next, it looks like, I think I've got 7 dashboards here that I was able to put like a filter on that allows us to see windows that have the setup nature or a maintenance card nature or an entry or a utility or remove and delete, reconcile, and take each of those windows and spread them flat across the page by module, I thought was a pretty neat idea for presentation. So that you're not looking at names, you're looking at modules and making sense of a role and a user and a task makeup. So in this case, in fact, these 7 dashboards all look just like this. We're going to analyze a couple of the setup windows here. Let's look at Jack. In the user's slicer up at the top, let me clear it out. And let's go find Jack. There he is. Okay, so enable Jack in our user slicer. And what's going to happen elsewhere on this page is everything else is going to filter down. And you will see the windows, the setup only windows that Jack himself would have access to. Here we go. I'm having a little bit of delay on the video, but here we go. It filtered down a little bit so you can see there's only a couple of windows in accounts receivable. There's only a couple of windows in the setup area, as well as payables. Not much access there. Most of this is really granted through the bookkeeper role, right? And the bookkeeper role shows that these are the cards that are granted access to the windows or any of those 10 operational areas in the system. And here's kind of a neat one I want to share with you while we're here. Is this, you apply an extra filter on this, and everybody has this task called the default user. All right, and here's a little tip. I've seen and I've witnessed where people get frustrated with GP security and they don't want to create a task and they don't want to create a role and they don't want to go through the motions of mitigating their risk in the environment. And they add windows and they add reports and they add things to the default user. That task is assigned to everybody. And therefore, anything that you assign to it rolls out to all users. I experienced once where the default user had all tasks from the entire system assigned to it. So it really, in fact, was just about a power user. So always want to maybe click on the default user task here when you're looking at one of these areas, like the setup windows alone, and see, the default user here, how many setup windows are really being extended by this default task. It could be cards, right? It could be delete windows, but be really careful about what your default user window-wise is granting access to here. All right, let's move on to the next one. Go on to the maintenance page. All right, so as we're looking at the maintenance window, the maintenance dashboard is going to show anything that is like a card, anything on the card tasks primarily. Those are your master records. They are some key windows in GP. Let's look at a couple under the role selection option. Under the roles, let's remove all from the eraser. Let's see what kind of roles grant access to a couple of key windows, like the general ledger account maintenance window. Let's look at the account manager. What kind of windows here, from a setup standpoint, can this user get into? All right, now that we've refreshed the page here, the accounting manager has access to a couple of maintenance windows in the system, a few in the company, but under financial, looks like they can in fact get into the account maintenance window, the vendor maintenance window, and the customer maintenance window. This account manager role is really only assigned to one user, my user here called account manager, and it's automatically filtered down and shows you the related users on the right corner. I find that's kind of neat, especially if you want to go kind of backwards. Let's do back to select all. And maybe we'll pop into the next dashboard here. Let's go over to entry and we'll demonstrate that feature. Entry windows are pretty sensitive windows because if you can get into a window and enter in transaction, chances are you could be entering something that you shouldn't, but you want to really ensure that people who have access to these windows are the right people. All right, let's take a look at the entry windows here. Let's look at the AP clerk under the roles. Let's wipe out the roles. Scroll down a bit until we can find, and this is a default AP clerk role that came out of the box from Dynamics GP. It's going to filter down. You notice that we don't have any entry windows in system or company, and that would make sense, but we do have a whole bunch of other entry windows spread across the other core modules that are on this dashboard. I'll take a moment to point out, by the way, that this is just the core modules, right? If you had entry windows that you wanted to bring onto your dashboard from manufacturing or from project accounting or from payroll or human resources, you could absolutely do the same thing with this. In fact, the core structure is already built. It's just not filtering it down by those particular modules right now or exposing those in a highlighted way. So we're looking at the AP clerk. Would it make sense that this person has no access to receivables? Of course it does. Under the financial window, does it make sense that this AP clerk can do journal entries? We have to, answer that question independently. But you can see on the payables side, it looks like they can do a number of entries inside of the payables transaction entry window, especially. Here's what they're going to need access to as an AP clerk. All right, you can do this with any of your users or any of your roles, not a problem whatsoever. Let's expand that back out. And while we're in the entry window, I'm going to go ahead and clear the tasks and expose the entry windows that the default user grants access to. I'll clear this one out here and do just default user. Of course, this task is assigned to all users in Dynamics GP. Excellent. All right, so we filtered this down now to just the default. When this snaps back, I'm going to shift gears and go into segregation of duties. I'll go ahead and flip to that page now so that that's refreshed. All right, so Dynamics Great Plains doesn't really have any kind of baked in segregation of duties, reporting or capacity really whatsoever. They leave it up to you to figure out what users and roles, what roles and tasks, what tasks and operations ultimately get baked in. You have the opportunity through some ISV products to build your own, essentially, segregation of duties opportunities. But even with those, you don't always have a good visual cue. So I took the idea of trying to build this with Power BI, and here's what we came up with. I've got 7 of these so far in the segregation of duties area. You can see across the bottom, it starts with the SOD financial, right? And we'll spend a few minutes explaining what these are about because the rest of them are pretty much the same. They're really just tailored to each individual module along the way. So in Dynamics GP, on the left side of this dashboard, we represent essentially the process flow. The modules themselves would get set up. In this case, the financial module, right? The module setup has a series of windows. These may not be all the windows, but these are the windows that my experience with Great Plains essentially said, really should be part of my dashboard. The second row down here is the master records, right? After the modules are set up, then we have an area where we can create general ledger accounts, or we can create unit accounts, all right? Or we can make some mass modifications occur on accounts or account groups, right? So you can maintain master records, which are effectively used by transactions for the rest of the environment. So knowing who has access to those to me is important. The next row down is the blue. You'll see we've got 2 blues on here. And Sean Dorward and his GP Hacks page has had a fantastic graphical display of all the different workflow types by module in Dynamics GP that have come about since it started in 2013 and all the way through current present day. And I use that as a pretty good reference to find out, okay, this module and that module have different workflow opportunities that we can essentially put sort of like a mitigation of risk along the row for segregation of duties. In this case, we have financial workflow and we have transaction workflow approval, 2 workflow approval types in the financial module alone. So they're both represented here as maybe a method to say, okay, you can create an account, but you can't have it auto approve. A workflow step may be approved before that account can really be, used. The next row down is transaction entry, right? So after accounts are created, then who can enter transactions and post to those? That's what this means. And which types of entries? Maybe some people can only do unit entries, or some people can do journal entries, or only do batch entries. With a dashboard like this, you can expose that. There is general ledger batch approval in workflow, but that tan line that you'll see is the old fashioned batch approval, password approved, password posting process. You'll see that I don't have anything lit up right there right now, but some of the other modules will. And that just ensures that, no one person can enter, the account and do the setups and create the batch and post the transaction, all without somebody not seeing it. Settlement and, how is that adjusted or corrected at the very end there, kind of give you a visual cue. Now, I picked all these windows for just the financial module. The other dashboards will have their own. But the green lines mean good, right? Green means, okay, the workflow is active, or that window is accessible to the selected user or role, okay? Let's bounce off onto the right side here. I'm going to start with the roles slicer. If I clear out my roles slicer, and I'm going to focus on, let's pick on, how about the accounting manager? All right, so I select the accounting manager. Again, this is a user as well, but you get to see it tied to the default role effectively that came out of the box from Dynamics GP. And you'll see what financial segregation of duties looks like for that role. See this window, the account modifier combiner has now been removed. All right. Let's put the AP clerk in motion. Okay. As expected, the AP clerk really doesn't have any access inside of the financial area, and is indicated by the lack of green indicators. You can see that that is a good setup for that particular role here. Now, let's move on down to the receivables segregation of duties and follow a similar type of example. All right, we are now on the segregation of duties tab for the receivables module. And going left down, our columns our rows are pretty much the same here in terms of what our steps are through the segregation process. And you can see that we start with a receivables setup, customer class setup. There is no customer workflow approval in Dynamics GP yet. So that's what this was really indicating here. But we do have receivables batch approval workflow. So that's set up, and you can see that the posting batch, the old-fashioned password approval for receivables and cash receipt batches is also enabled here. Let's take a look at one of our roles at this point. Sorry, let's look at a user. Let's wipe out all of the users and let's pick on our operations manager. See what kind of access that the operations manager has inside of the receivables module. What their segregation of duties really looks like for that module. There we go. When we filter down the receivables dashboard based on just this one user here, you see they don't have any entry capabilities, but you can see they do have the ability to maintain records. And this looks like a pretty reasonable segregation of duties setup for this particular user here. So moving down the page, let's move on into purchase order processing. We have a purchasing page for this because this yields the other types of really the entry windows that we're really trying to watch out for. So let's go into that one. All right, so here we are on our segregation of duties page for the purchasing. And you'll notice we've got purchase order processing related items. These aren't payables, these are purchase order processing items. So we do have our own payables page, as you see, but from requisitions and purchase order entry, as well as doing receivings and purchase invoice match transaction entries, as well as all the things that can happen in the settlement area with vendor payments, right? The payables and the purchasing area, those are two you're going to want to pay close attention to with your segregation of duties setups because of the capacity to commit fraud, right? Of creating a vendor and entering a vendor invoice and then posting that invoice and then doing a check run and paying that vendor. And then ultimately having the capability to go back into the vendor utility and change that vendor or merge that vendor with another vendor. There's some bad things that can be done if you don't have your setups right. So get the payables and the purchasing modules, segregation of duties done. This visual tool, I think, can help. Let's see if we can find a couple of good examples here. Let's go down to the tasks window. All right, this filter here at the bottom. Let me clear that out. right? And if you know a particular task that you want to research, let's go down. Let me actually open up this. So here we are in the purchasing page. This is the purchase order processing page. You'll see on the right side here under roles, I went ahead and did a pre-filter on this page where I selected the bookkeeper. The bookkeeper role now exposes all of the windows in a segregation of duties fashion here that are associated with that role. You notice that that user or that user type cannot get into any of the setup windows. So yeah, that's probably a pretty good setup for the bookkeeper. They also are restricted and they don't have the ability to do requisitions or purchase orders or do receivings against those. They can really, if you go over to the purchasing page, they can do some purchasing related items, but really not purchase order processing related items. So that's some of the kind of things that you might find out with a visual representation of your segregation of duties. Let's move into the last type of report that I'm currently working with for this Power BI model and GP security, trying to expose where we have significant risk. A lot of customers have come and their auditors are essentially saying to them, hey, you need to get some information about who has access to the setup windows in GP, right? Who are you giving windows to that shouldn't be in those windows? They may not be using those, but we need to document and proof that they in fact cannot do that. So more and more firms are getting that compliance certification for SOX or for internal IT audit or even some of these applications audits. You know, stakeholders and shareholders want to make sure that you're in good position with regard to that. So this dashboard here shows administrative tasks only, right? Where are my high risk areas? I'm noticing here that this is filtered out, right, by just administrative tasks. And on the right side, these are the only roles that actually have admin tasks assigned. So this has already done some of the heavy lifting by pre-filtering out items that were really not so much at risk for answering that type of security related question. Let's go over to the last two tabs here. They're pretty much the same. Let's go to the new security tab. This is the audit series again. And one of the common questions that we seem to get frequently from customers and auditors is, what has changed on our users? You know, what new users do we have? What changes have been made to existing users? Okay. And this Power BI dashboard and these two dashboards are really aimed at looking at two different, you know, kind of filtering mechanisms. One is looking at new security objects that were created, and it's looking at them created over a span of time. Okay. A lot of times you're looking at an annual review or a monthly review, or even more commonly a quarterly review, just so that you stay on top of these changes before they get out of control. The date slicer at the top allows us to kind of filter things down and maybe do just a quarter or just a year or a month. And this is looking at created dates for users and created dates for roles and tasks and reports and forms. The same thing is true on the modified security page, where you have the same approach, but because those tables in the database are designed to actually capture not just their created values, but also their modified by values, we're able to see existing roles, tasks, and users, also see how and when things were changed and by whom on the modified page. So all that being said, the audit series is where we're spending a lot of time focusing right now, because we want to save some time. We want to save some of the compliance and the costs of overhead in terms of getting answers to the questions that we have in terms of GP security. Thank you so much for attending the session today on Power BI and how you can use it to understand your Dynamics GP security layout. My name is David Laster, and I've had a great time working with the Dynamics Con folks. I hope that you have the opportunity to see a number of the other free training sessions they're putting on these next few days. And I'm going to try to catch up on the questions and answers that you have. Well, hello and welcome. Thank you for watching my session. My name is David Laster, and I have Christine Bruno to stand with me here while we answer some of the questions and answers in this section of our presentation. Hey, Christine.
Hey, Dave. How's it going?
It's going good. I'm really glad the DynamicsCon has finally started, and it seems like it's been off to a pretty good start. The keynote was awesome, and great to kind of get my session out of the way as early as possible. But
now you can just sit back and enjoy them.
I know we got a few questions out there from people that we've been staging.
Yes.
So if you don't mind, let's go through those, right?
Yeah. Yep. So let's go with the first question. Does this work with other ISV products?
Excellent question. I did want to save that for later because ISV products are, they have their own table structure. They have their own security tasks, roles, and so forth. So you absolutely can use this product with, or this idea, if you will, Power BI against ISV products. David Musgrave has the Power Tools product, which has an enhanced capability of essentially populating more information than out of the box Dynamics GP does into a place where Power BI can pick it up, right? So there's some other forms and some other options in there that, yeah, as an ISV product, the sky's really the limit. One of the other Power BI products I presented on in the past is the Great Plains Intelligent Administrator. And that has a whole couple of sections that talk to different ISVs as well that sort of highlight the same information.
Cool. Thank you. Looks like another question. Is this Power BI file available for download as part of the conference?
Excellent question. Again, this is something I really have been trying to get to completion stage and share with people. We have a couple of customer partners that we're working with right now that have really provided some excellent input into where it is right now. We do continue and will be looking to try to find other people and partners that are interested in working with this and kind of see if does it really fit their needs and getting it into a position that they can use it. It's not a free download for this particular session right now, but there is a bunch of information that I'm trying to create because it's still kind of a new thing. We do have on greyvoc.com on our Power BI solutions page, there is a whole bunch of pictures and information of all the slides that are in the dashboard. We also have a YouTube page that has 7 questions so far that I've put together and recorded about how this tool can answer those questions. So my idea right now is to present the idea, and yes, I'd love to work with more people. So if you do visit our website, drop your name in there so that I can get in touch with you personally and kind of take this to whatever state you might need to. All right. Have any other questions out there? Oh,
No,
I saw one on payroll actually. Power BI in general, yes, can be used with payroll. I've worked with data or integrity data, Danny Clemenson over there to do a Power BI and payroll, ID and presentation. The information for payroll and payroll security could also be added to the security dashboard. So yes, you can add that information in here. Due to the, I guess, let's say the somewhat limited number of payroll customers out there, that at least that I work with, we tend to focus on more of the core stuff, at least until we kind of get enough, feedback from customers and people like you guys that have a keen interest in the idea of Power BI based security reporting. All right, hey Brad, thank you, and Amber and all the other people that commented on the session today. Thank you very much. And DynamicsCon, this looks great. I appreciate all that you're putting into putting on a great free training session for all of the Dynamics users around the world. And I've just been tickled to death to be a part of it. So Christine, thank you for moderating with me today.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Have a great day. Appreciate everybody's comments. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
See ya.